So today we're going to be working with expressions with negative exponents. All right. And these are a little bit trickier. My students tend to get tripped up on these. So we're going to work really carefully. Okay. One thing to remember is when you have a number raised to a positive exponent, it means repeated multiplication. When you have things raised to negative exponents, it means repeated division. All right. Now, we also need to pay attention to the parentheses because they do make a difference here. So take a look at these first two problems. You've got 5x to the negative second. And over here, you've got 5x in parentheses raised to the negative second. Now, these two things mean something different. Okay. On this first one, you've got 5 times x to the negative second power. Only the x is being raised to the negative second power. Okay. So the 5 is just a regular whole number. Okay? But x is being raised to the negative second power, which means we're dividing by x twice. So we're starting with 5 and dividing it by x twice. So divided by x squared. So 5 over x squared is the way to write this using positive exponents. All right? Another way to think of it is 5 is a regular number, so it goes on top, but x has a negative exponent, so it goes on the bottom of the fraction and becomes positive. Okay? Now, just similarly to that one, but with parentheses this time, notice this time, this whole thing is in parentheses raised to the negative second power. What that means is we're repeatedly dividing 5x twice. So in this case, this whole thing's going to go on the bottom of the fraction. So we'll put a 1 on top because there's nothing left on top. But the 5x is going to go on the bottom of the fraction raised to the regular second power. So 5x to the negative second power becomes 1 over 5x to the positive second power. And we can simplify this a bit, right? Because 5 to the second power is 25. X to the second power is x to the second power. There you go. 1 over 25x squared. All right. Let's do some more of these. Now, on the next one, 1 divided by 2 to the negative fifth power. Now, remember, negative exponents mean repeated division, but look at this. This is already on the bottom of the fraction. So this is dividing something that's already be dividing, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? But what happens is, since it's on the bottom of the fraction with a negative exponent, that moves it back to the top of the fraction and makes it a positive exponent. So this becomes 2 to the positive fifth power. And that's the simplified version of that. So when you have a negative exponent on the bottom of the fraction, you can move to the top of the fraction and make it positive again. Similarly right here, 1 divided by w to the negative third power. This whole thing moves to the top of the fraction and becomes positive. And you could put it over 1 if you want to, but we don't usually put whole numbers over 1. You usually get rid of the 1 and just make it a whole number. All right? So 1 over w to the negative third power really means w to the third power. All right? Let's see some harder ones now. Because notice, this one here has a negative power on the bottom of the fraction, and it already has a number on top. Now, notice that number on top, we could just keep it on top because it doesn't have a negative exponent. We don't have to change it. We don't have to mess with it. But that negative exponent on the bottom has to move to the top because it's a negative exponent. So when we move it to the top, that becomes a positive exponent and it ends up next to the 6. And that is our simplified answer because there's nothing left on the bottom. Last one, p to the negative third divided by b to the negative 8. Okay, so this one's a little confusing. You've got a negative exponent on top. That means it's going to have to move to the bottom and become a positive exponent. Now, on the bottom, you've got a negative exponent, so it's going to have to move to the top and become a positive exponent. So that b to the negative 8 moves to the top and becomes b to the positive 8. That p to the negative third moves to the bottom and becomes p to the positive third. There's your answer. All right. So if you want a simplified version of what's going on here, basically it's this. If you have a negative exponent, it moves either from the bottom to the top or it'll move from the top to the bottom. It just moves it to the different spot of the fraction. All right? And if there's a number there, a coefficient, that coefficient doesn't really move unless a negative exponent's being applied to it. All right? But for example, on this one, that 6, it stayed on top because nothing was being done to it. So hopefully this video helped you. If you did, please hit that like button. Also subscribe because it really helps us out. But with that being said, good luck on your math and I will see you next time.